Welcome back to The Nuance. It is bright and early on Sunday morning. It is before 6 a.m., and Sundays are the days that I would typically have a live recorded call with one of you discussing your health and fitness goals and how we could go about adjusting your habits, behaviors, your actions, your routines, and your systems to achieve them. But since I made the genius idea of starting the genius decision, I don't think genius idea doesn't make sense. I made the genius decision to begin to start this podcast just a couple of weeks before arguably the busiest time of the year, the busiest week of the year, right before the last week of the year where everybody is traveling for the holidays, everybody's off work, everybody has things going on, including myself. I was gone for an entire week. I was home in Pittsburgh over Christmas and into New Year. I actually flew on both of the holiday days themselves, on Christmas Day and on New Year's Day, because they were the cheapest flights by far. And it was really awesome flying home on Christmas Day because my plane was basically empty and we had so much space around us, which eased my anxieties around traveling with a 1-year-old, a 13-month-old who just wants to be down and running, does not like to be held for extended periods of time. So that was really helpful. Much busier travel day on the 1st, on New Year's Day, which I think is a little bit surprising to me. But regardless, I was gone for an entire week. I've just made it back and I have my first scheduled call with a previous client of mine this upcoming Wednesday on the 8th. And so I figured I would bridge that gap a little bit so that I didn't go a full 2 weeks without speaking to you all, without having something to discuss, without having some type of relatable conversation with myself, albeit, but still, that you could take away, especially one during this time of year, that hopefully helps you narrow down your focus a little bit, as I'm sure you have, actually, I hope that you have breathed in some of the new year, new me motivation that is in the air and leverage it a little bit to make some headway towards those things that you keep saying year after year that you want to do for yourself, the changes that you want to make, the improvements that you want to see in regards to your health and fitness. So I want to talk about that concept as a whole and where I would say is the best perspective, the best mindset, the best to start and the best framework to start from in regards to those new year, new me goals, essentially. And like I mentioned, I hope that you do lean into that a little bit. I hope that you do play into that game. It almost feels gamified at this point, where it's everybody knows it's coming, everybody can predict it. Lots of people make fun of it. Lots of people say it's silly, it's stupid, it doesn't work. They make fun of the people who jump on the bandwagon, so to speak, of setting these New Year's resolutions. And I historically have been a person who never really understood the whole concept, not even around the new year itself, but the diet starts Monday. If we're talking about today's a Sunday, right? Or a couple of days ago, if it was a Thursday, if we were having this conversation then, or if I was, saying this then, it would be the same for me. I would say, why not today? Why not start right now? Why would I wait until Monday? Never made sense to me. Same concept never made sense to me with the whole new year. Like, why would I wait until the new year? Why would I not start now? And I still feel that way in some regard, in some capacity. But the more and more that I have been involved in the health and fitness industry specifically, obviously that's the niche that I am speaking about when it comes to health, or when it comes to New Year's resolutions, their health and fitness goals and objectives, right? The longer that I'm involved in the industry as a whole, and the longer that I've been working with clients one-on-one, the longer that I have had a direct tie in to those that start at any point, whether it be at the beginning of the year or not, the more I have seen how powerful motivation around this time of year can be, and quite honestly, how silly it is to not use it to your advantage, because it can work. It can be the thing that leads to the results that you want. And at the very least, it can give you an advantage. It can give you a leg up, and it can propel you forward, even if it's for a brief period of time. Certainly, one of the things I'm going to get into here is, again, the framework of how to use it, how to leverage it, and where to start what strategies to implement and whatnot, so it doesn't become like I'm going all in right away, and then with something that's unsustainable, and then inevitably have to quit and give up, and then you just start this process over and over again. But if you go about it with just I'm going to breathe in some of that motivation and I'm going to use it for myself, then I would say that that's something I encourage at this point. It's something I've been telling my clients over the past week since I've gotten back into doing my weekly check-ins and recording voice memos and just having these types of conversations personally with them. I've been saying it over and over again. Use it. It's there. It's leverage it. It's contagious. It's in the air. Breathe it in and run with it. New year motivation is powerful. Now, that being said, there's all types of goals that people set for themselves. We're going to talk about specifically health and fitness, as I've already mentioned. But in that light, I feel that there are still many, many things that people can set for themselves in terms of outcomes that they want to see come to fruition. But there is obviously a common one that I think everybody could guess is the most repeatable or repeatedly set resolution. And I'll give you a second to think about it. It's losing weight, right? It is weight loss. I want to lose X amount of pounds, or I want to get down to this number on the scale. And certainly some of that does come with more specific goals as well, in terms of I want to drop a pant size, or I want to lose this many inches. And so it's not always just directly scale related or directly tied to the scale. There's obviously a little bit of nuance there that is fantastic when people acknowledge that, when they're aware of that, when they recognize that and utilize that in terms of their approach to how they go about achieving the outcome that they want. But it's weight loss for most people. This is what I want to achieve. And so if that is you, if that is kind of the goal that you have in mind, and you do not have any of those other things that I just mentioned anywhere in your thoughts at all, in terms of what if I just, my pant size is decreased? What if my waist measurement decreases? What if I notice myself looking different in the mirror, or I notice myself looking different in photos, so on and so forth? I want to discuss how those outcomes are the same as, just as good as, if not better than pure quote unquote weight loss in regards to the scale now says a lower number. And I now see a lower number staring back at me on the scale. And that concept, because that can happen, it's a reality that happens, I would say, fairly often when people set goals for themselves and go about it a certain way in terms of I want to lose weight. The outcome ends up being maybe the scale doesn't move at all, or it moves down a lot less than initially anticipated or initially desired, but the actual outcome itself is really, really favorable because body recomposition occurs. And what that really means is the makeup of your mass, the tissue that makes up your body, is a different composition now. It is made up of different stuff, or more and or less of different things. And there's lots of things that we can talk about, or that are included in that when we talk about organs and skin and fluid and blood, and right, there's lots of things that may have weight inside of your body. But the two general categories that we consider here are skeletal muscle tissue, and fat tissue, essentially, right? Those are the quote unquote biggest components when it comes to your body composition. And so those two things are the percentage of them that make up your body weight, your body mass, can change and alter without the scale moving at all, like I said, or with it moving very little, because you can lose a substantial amount of fat while also simultaneously gaining a substantial amount of muscle tissue, and have those things offset each other like nearly identically, and again, show up with minimal movement on the scale, but major differences in terms of how you look, how you feel, how you function, how your clothes fit, again, your appearance in pictures, circumference measurements, so on and so forth, because muscle is, as they say, more dense. It takes up less space than fat tissue, even though if it weighs the same amount. And so you become a quote unquote smaller being, even if you weigh the same, or even if you've only lost couple of pounds or even ounces on the scale, right? So what I want to throw out there is this idea that maybe what you really want and what you really care about, your real goal, isn't necessarily to see a smaller number staring back at you on the scale, but rather to look better, to feel better, to function better. And oftentimes that comes with having less less fat tissue and more muscle mass, right? So that's the generalized category that I want to throw at you, that I want to discuss here in terms of can that happen, right? How can that outcome become a reality? How can I improve my body composition? Well, there's essentially three ways that that can happen mathematically. If you think about it, we're talking about percentages of your body weight, right? And we're just talking about two categories. If we said that that's all that it was made up of, fat tissue and muscle tissue, how do we reduce our body fat percentage? Because ultimately that is what we're discussing when we say body recomposition in an improving it in a favorable way. It's your body fat percentage going down. So mathematically that can happen three different ways, essentially, right? The first one being you lose pure body fat and that's it, right? The scale goes down, you lose body fat, the amount of body fat you have on your body reduces, and the amount of muscle tissue that you have remains exactly the same. If that were to happen, you would reduce your body fat percentage and you would notice all of those changes. The second one is going to be the opposite. Your body fat levels stay exactly the same, but your muscle mass increases. And what that does is, again, mathematically reduces your body fat percentage. In that scenario, you would actually weigh more, but you would be leaner, and you would notice those differences again in terms of I feel better, I function better, and I actually look leaner as well. I have more definition. I look more toned, if you will. And then the third one is a simultaneous occurrence of both of those first situations, where you are losing body fat and building muscle tissue at the same time. And that would create arguably, depending on the rates or the magnitude, the largest gain or the largest gap change displacement, if you will, of your body fat percentage. So there are three different ways in which that can happen. And I think far too few people even acknowledge or recognize the back half, the last two, option 2 and option 3. And again, they come at it as a purely, I want to just lose weight. I want to just get smaller. I want to just lose body fat. And again, that can be a way in which you achieve the outcome that you want or think that you want. However, what tends to be the issue with an approach that is centered around that is your muscle, if that's the way you're going about it, if that's the framework that you are utilizing in terms of this is what I want to do, usually how you go about doing it leads to muscle tissue loss. Because when we go about things in terms of how do I just lose weight as fast as possible, how do I just burn as much fat as quickly as I possibly can, we tend to lean towards the things that are really restrictive from a dietary perspective, really, really low calories, really, really low carb, so on and so forth. And we tend to do things from an exercise standpoint that are framed around or rooted in how many calories can I expend or burn. And that tends to be a lot of HIIT, that tends to be a lot of cardio, maybe group classes where you're kind of moving your body very constantly, keeping your heart rate up all of the time in all of your workouts, so on and so forth. And so what that can end up doing is certainly put you in a position where you're in a substantial calorie deficit, you're losing weight, and yes, you will lose body fat, but you're also going to lose lean tissue as well, because the calories are so low and because the exercise that you are doing is not conducive for maintenance of your muscle tissue. It is conducive for maybe improvement of endurance and your cardiovascular system, but not your musculoskeletal system. And so, lots of people understand that at this point. Thankfully, we are in a place where the industry is very, very aware as a whole. Most of the general population, people are very aware that resistance training is huge. It is a huge component for, of a sound, solid program in general, no matter what the goal is. If you want to improve your health and fitness, it should be a part of it. Longevity in life, in a healthy, fit body, resistance training it's needed, it's necessary, it's required for that. And lots of people understand that that is what is now going to be the kind of the key element or component for changing the way that you look. If your goal is more directed towards, I want, if it's more aesthetic, I want to look leaner, more defined, more toned, etc., you got to lift weights, right? You have to resistance train. And the main reason is because that is what's conducive for maintaining muscle, because it's how you build it, and how you build it is how you maintain it, essentially. And so that has become a really, really centered focus for a lot of people, but that comes with some downsides as well, at least in terms of how it is presented. So, like I said, we want to make sure that we are including resistance training in our program so that we are at the very least maintaining that muscle tissue while losing fat. But it's been hyperbolized. Is that the actual verb there for hyperbole? I believe so. It's been hyperbolized. It's been over exaggerated so much in terms of what resistance training will do for you in regards to your weight loss goal, because it is fantastic for building muscle, maintaining muscle, but resistance training itself and having muscle itself actually doesn't do all that much from like a weight loss or fat loss standpoint. Because, and here's where it comes into play often, that is pushed by people who usually are trying to sell you something, trying to sell you their plan, their workout program that promises these results, right? But they frame it around muscle burning fat. And so they say the more muscle that you have, the more fat that you're going to burn, because the more calories that you expend, so on and so forth. And again, while I will always say that resistance training is basically necessary, needed, everybody should be doing it, it is not fantastic. It's not a good way to burn fat. And when you build muscle, if that's the outcome that you end up achieving through resistance training, that muscle itself also doesn't burn fat. It's kind of just a strange way of thinking that I think confuses people. And one of the ways that it does so is people will throw out this notion that if you have extra muscle tissue on your body, if you build extra pounds of muscle, that naturally your body will become this fat burning machine. And while you are sleeping, while you are moving, or while you aren't moving, rather, at rest, you're going to expend all of these extra calories because it takes energy to maintain that muscle tissue. And thus you are able to either lose more weight or eat more food and consume more calories without gaining weight. And that is where there's a discrepancy here. That is where things are not true. That's where that is hyperbolized and it's over exaggerated, because this has been looked into, and there really isn't an exact figure. There's like mathematical estimates that can give you kind of a range of what we're talking about here. But it boils down to this: for every extra pound of muscle that you build and that you put onto your body at rest, you essentially burn an additional 6 calories per day. And that's not nothing. So it is a true statement that the more muscle that you have, the more muscle that you build, the more calories that you burn naturally at rest, sure. But we're talking about tens of calories, not hundreds, right? And the way that people pose this is, again, that I can eat whatever I want. You could eat whatever you wanted, and you could lose all this weight, or you could maintain your weight. You wouldn't even have to think about counting your calories, macros, anything like that, if you just build more muscle. And that's just not true. It is not. Resistance training and building muscle is not a good way to burn calories or to lose fat. However, with what I talked about with the concept of it requiring energy to maintain that muscle tissue, right? While moving, the movement aspect of a body that is bigger because of increased muscle mass and muscle tissue will absolutely expend more calories throughout the day, quote unquote, naturally, but not at rest. While moving, more daily movement would actually make that impact that people are posing resistance training to be, as this magical element of fat loss or weight loss. It's really not. Movement is. And there's such a simpler way to go about it. If these are your goals anyway, if there's one thing to focus on, it would be more daily movement. I'll say it one more time. Where everybody should be resistance training. I think it's necessary, and it's incredible for building muscle, maintaining muscle. So if your goal is body recomposition or just pure fat loss, which again would lead to body recomposition, you should be resistance training, because it helps you maintain that muscle tissue and it gives you the outcome that you really want. But if you're coming at this new year, new me resolution goal that you have with a focus of, I want to pull the biggest levers, I want to focus on the things that are going to be the most impactful for me, it's going to just be moving more daily. And when I say moving more, I'm not talking about going and doing intentional cardio, which you can, and it's great. That's good for your overall health as well. And it can help in terms of a fat loss goal and calorie expenditure. I'm not talking about HIIT. I'm not talking about group classes. I'm just talking about moving that body more, moving that more muscular body more, walking, going for a walk every single day, parking further in the parking lot at the grocery store so you have to walk further to the door, taking the stairs instead of the escalator. If you work in an office, walking to the bathroom using the stairs on a different floor when you go to the bathroom, so you have to move more. All of these things add up over time in terms of how much are you moving your body, how much are you using that muscle that you're building to contract and pull on your bones and move your body through space, because that does utilize a substantial amount of energy, that does burn a substantial amount of calories, and that can add up, quote unquote, easily to the hundreds and hundreds of additional calorie expenditure that could create that reality for you where you're either losing the weight or able to be much more flexible with your diet and not gain weight because you are more active. Now, again, I want you to resistance train as well. Urge you to have that a part of your protocol, your plan, your structure for how you are going about achieving these New Year's resolution goals, whether it's purely weight loss alone or whether you recognize and acknowledge that it's actually body recomposition. The biggest levers that you can pull are certainly going to be moving more and resistance training, but for different reasons. And so I hope that as you see those things being talked about over the next couple of weeks, we're only 5 days in. It's January 5th. It's still very new. It's still very fresh. There's going to be, people have them locked and loaded. I promise you, all of these coaches and trainers and whatnot are going to keep throwing at my program, my app, this workout, this diet. This is how you're going to achieve those results. This is how you're going to achieve those results. I want you to understand what the big levers are in terms of how you can achieve them, but also what achieving them really means at the end of the day. Just as a quick summary, if you think that the goal is purely weight loss, it's probably not. It's probably to look better, feel better, function better, improve the way that your clothes fit, improve how you look in pictures, and that can happen sans scale reduction. That can happen without the scale going down at all. Body recomposition might be what you really are after, and the way that you can go about that is purely losing fat while maintaining your muscle mass, maintaining the amount of fat that you currently have, but building muscle tissue, or losing fat while building muscle. And you have to resistance train to do any of that, but resistance training itself is not a good strategy, a good tool for burning calories or, losing fat as a whole. More movement is, so being more active as a whole while resistance training and then doing cardio for your health, whether it be physical or mental health, because that can certainly be a component that you see improve with your health and fitness or your life in general through your health and fitness, which is a whole other topic that I can get into. I'm talking about this because I know so many people have these physical outcome, aesthetic, scale related objectives that they want to achieve for, at the start of this year. It's so common. But another thing I could have started this podcast off with was, hey, if that's the case, I want you to also be aware of the fact that there's so many other outcomes that are positive outside of body scale weight reduction or body recomposition, which are things like I got stronger, I got faster, I improved my relationship with food, I improved my relationship with my body and with pictures and with clothes. I, am, in pain less often now. I have more flexibility or mobility. I am able to run around and pick up my kids or my grandkids without huffing and puffing or without pain, so on and so forth. There's so many different things that can improve while prioritizing your health and fitness outside of just the more vain aesthetic outcomes that we all want to see. But there's nothing wrong with having them. So that's where that's why I wanted to talk about this, because it's still so prevalent and it's going to continue to be for the next couple of weeks. So now that I've been rambling for almost half an hour now, I hope that gives you some additional thought, additional perspective when you initiate your plan, right? When you kind of set in stone, this is how I'm going to go about leveraging and using that contagious new year, new me motivation that's in the air, which I hope you do. I hope you breathe it in. I hope you use it. I hope you run with it. And I hope it kickstarts your change, your behavior change, your lifestyle change that leads to all of those outcomes for the better. I hope you weigh less. I hope you build muscle. I hope you improve your body composition. And I hope you improve your relationship with food and the scale. And I hope you're more mobile. And I hope you're, more fit and you can run further and you're, in pain less often. All of it because you utilize the motivation, because you chose not to be a cynic like I used to be and sometimes still am. And you run with the you breathe it in and you run with that motivation, but you do it in a way that's actually sensible, logical, and in line with the goal that you truly want. So if I could sum all of this up, this 25 to 30-minute discussion up into one bit of advice, it's to think about what your goal really is. Think through it. Utilize this to develop a different perspective and a different mindset about what the outcome is that you truly want to achieve, and recognize those along the way, because they can happen under the hood, under the surface. Again, if you're just looking at what that scale says, you can miss it. And I don't want that to happen to you. So again, Sunday, I'm probably going to just quickly edit this and post it up today, Sunday, January 5th. And in that case, there will be 3 more days until my next live recorded call. Maybe I'm thinking about opening up my calendar a little bit more so I can do more of those calls and post more and talk to you and post more frequently with those episodes that I want to make up the majority of this podcast anyway. But we are starting back up on that in just a couple of days here. So I hope that you stick around for that you have found that first one helpful, and that you continue to find them helpful as well. And as always, if you find any of these discussions helpful, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform it is that you tune in. And remember, when it comes to your health and fitness, there's no right answers. There's only nuance. I'm John Knoll. Thanks for listening.